All right, everyone, strap in. We're going deep on this one, folks. We're talking about how Trump's victory is going to affect Aptera and, honestly, your wallet, too.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out.
We've got 2 articles from Inside EVs here. America's EV revolution collides with a second Trump era, and what happens to America's EV boom if Trump wins.
Right.
Plus, a YouTube video, and man, you got to see this one.
Oh, yeah.
From the Aptera Owners Club. Trump wants an Aptera, and he thinks Musk is going to make it.
Interesting title.
It is. So we've got the EV boom going strong right now,
Right.
but Trump's history with EVs and climate policies, well, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, hasn't it?
It has been, yeah. You've got this big push from Biden for the EV transition, and then Trump kind of wants to slam on the brakes.
Yeah.
Talking about gas prices and drilling.
It's like we're going back in time.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. He might actually end up helping Aptera in the process.
Yeah.
This little company that's been quietly making this super efficient solar-powered EV.
Yeah.
So before we get into that, let's talk about Trump and his stance on EVs.
Okay.
He started off, not a fan, and then he's suggesting they should have solar panels.
Right.
Doesn't he realize Aptera already has them?
Well, it seems like early on he was very negative about EVs, talking about limited range, the cost, job losses, the usual talking points. But then Elon Musk came out and endorsed him, and all of a sudden Trump is like, hey, EVs are pretty cool.
Yeah.
Even suggested solar panels on EVs in a conversation with Musk. So it seems like his opinions on EVs are based more on who he's friends with rather than the actual technology.
It does, yeah. So he kind of predicted Aptera without even knowing it.
It seems that way, yeah.
But let's get serious for a second.
Sure.
What about climate policies? Specifically the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA.
Right.
This has been huge for the EV market, but Trump's called it a scam. What's that going to mean for EV tax credits?
Well, he has said he wants to try to get back unspent funds from the IRA. So obviously, this has everyone in the EV industry a little bit nervous because those tax credits have really helped people make the switch to electric vehicles.
So is it game over for the IRA if Trump gets his way?
Well, a full repeal of the IRA is unlikely, I think. There's a big but here, and it involves the South. A lot of IRA money has already been invested, especially in those clean energy projects.
Yeah.
And you know where? In Republican-leaning states in the South.
Interesting.
So they're actually seeing the benefits, those states. So it would be very hard politically for Republicans to just take that money away.
So the South might actually save the IRA.
It's possible. And here's another thing. The Biden administration has been really fast-tracking IRA grants, getting that money out the door and into projects as quickly as possible. It's almost as if they knew this might happen.
Yeah.
And they wanted to make it harder for the next administration to change course.
It's smart. So even if the IRA survives, all this uncertainty must be stressing companies like Aptera out, right?
Well, it does make things more complicated, sure. But this is where Aptera's unique approach really comes in. Remember, because it's a three-wheeled vehicle, they never qualified for those federal tax credits anyway.
Right.
They've always been kind of like the rebels of the EV world, doing their own thing.
So they weren't invited to the party in the first place.
Not really, no. So they're kind of immune to all this IRA drama.
Interesting.
And here's the kicker. If those EV tax credits go away, guess what?
What?
Traditional EVs get more expensive, but Aptera's price stays the same.
Oh, I see.
They suddenly become even more attractive.
So Aptera could actually benefit from all this.
It's a really interesting situation, isn't it?
It is.
It just shows you how unpredictable the EV market can be.
It does.
You've got these big political forces at work, and then you've got a company like Aptera just quietly innovating, potentially ready to take advantage of all the chaos.
But before we get too excited, let's not forget Trump loves tariffs.
Right.
And those could hurt any car maker, including Aptera, right?
Oh, absolutely. Tariffs are a wild card. Aptera relies on global supply chains, like everyone else. If Trump starts putting tariffs on imported parts, it could really mess with their plans.
Yeah.
They might even have to move production back to the U.S.,
Right.
which would create its own problems.
So Aptera's got a tough road ahead.
Yeah, they've got this potential advantage if the EV tax credit goes away.
Right.
But then there's this threat of tariffs looming over them.
It's like a game of EV chess, where the board keeps tilting.
Exactly. It makes you wonder what the EV market will look like under Trump.
It does.
Yeah.
It feels like this unstoppable force of the EV revolution meeting this immovable object of Trump's policies. It's exciting and a little scary.
Yeah.
Are we headed for an EV boom or an EV bust?
That's the big question, isn't it? We'll dig into that more in the next part. But one thing's for sure, this is just the beginning.
It is.
So yeah, the EV market's facing a lot of uncertainty right now with Trump back in office. Lower gas prices, the IRA potentially going away. And those tariffs, it's enough to make anyone's head spin. But in all of this, Aptera is actually looking pretty good.
Okay, you've got my attention. How are they going to handle all this?
Well, they've always done things a bit differently. They never relied on those tax credits.
Yeah.
They built a vehicle that's efficient and affordable from the ground up.
Right.
And they're not so dependent on charging stations.
Like, they knew this was coming. They were ready for a world where the government might not support EVs so much.
Exactly, yeah.
So it all comes down to efficiency and affordability, not government handouts.
And that leads to a question for you, the listener. What are your priorities when it comes to an EV?
Right.
Are you looking for all the bells and whistles, no matter the cost? Or do you want something that's easy on the wallet and the environment?
That's a good question. And if the EV market does move away from all those government subsidies, those priorities are going to be even more important.
Absolutely. And here's something else to consider. This whole thing might actually cause a surge in EV demand in the short term.
Wait, really? I thought we were talking about the end of the EV world.
It does seem counterintuitive, but think about it. If Trump does get rid of the EV tax credit and there's a deadline, people are going to rush to buy EVs before that deal is gone.
Oh, so like a panic buy.
Pretty much, yeah. It could lead to a spike in sales, especially for the bigger car companies that have been relying on that tax credit. But then the real question is, what happens after that initial rush?
I see what you mean. So the tax credit disappears,
Yeah.
traditional EVs get more expensive, and Aptera, who never needed the tax credit anyway, suddenly looks like the best option.
Exactly. It's a pretty smart strategy if you think about it, and it shows why it's important to think long term.
Yeah.
Make decisions that are right for you and the future you want. The EV market's a wild ride right now.
For sure.
You gotta be ready for anything.
Good advice. But let's be real. This is Trump we're talking about.
Mm.
The man is unpredictable. Who knows what he'll actually do?
You're not wrong. Trying to predict what Trump will do is like trying to herd cats. We can analyze his statements, look at his policies, but there's always a chance he'll do something completely unexpected.
Yeah, it's like trying to predict the weather by watching a butterfly flap its wings.
Mm-hmm.
You can try to make an educated guess, but ultimately it's chaos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for you, the listener, the key is to stay informed, stay involved, and be ready to adapt. The EV market's changing fast, and politics is just adding fuel to the fire. The more you understand what's going on, the better you'll be able to navigate it all.
Like we're explorers in uncharted territory.
Yeah.
We need to be prepared for anything
Yeah.
and be open to learning new things along the way.
Speaking of uncharted territory, we need to look at the global picture, too.
Oh, right. We've been so focused on what's happening in the U.S. that we forgot about the rest of the world.
It's easy to do that, but the EV revolution isn't just happening here. What's going on in other countries, especially China, is going to affect the U.S. market no matter who's president.
So how is Trump's America First approach going to affect the global EV race? It seems like a bit of a contradiction. He wants to support American manufacturing, but his policies might actually end up helping China dominate the EV market.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation, and one that Trump might not handle very well. If he focuses too much on protectionism, adding tariffs and discouraging foreign investment, it could backfire.
So instead of making America great again, he could actually end up pushing EV manufacturing to other countries and letting China take over.
It's definitely a possibility.
Wow.
Those tariffs would make it more expensive for companies like Aptera to get the parts they need from overseas.
Yeah.
That could lead to delays, higher costs, and American EVs becoming less competitive globally.
It's like trying to run a race with your feet tied together.
Yeah.
You might think you're protecting yourself, but you're just making it easier for everyone else to pass you.
That's a perfect analogy, and it highlights why it's so important to consider the global context when talking about Trump and the EV market. It's not just about what happens in the U.S., it's about the impact his decisions have on the whole world.
So where does this leave Aptera? Can they really succeed if the U.S. is pulling back from the global EV race?
It definitely presents challenges, but Aptera has a few things working in their favor. First, their unique design and focus on efficiency could make them really popular in markets where affordability and practicality are key.
Right.
They're not trying to be the flashiest EV out there.
Yeah.
They're aiming for a balance of function and sustainability.
It's like the tortoise and the hare.
Yeah.
While everyone else is focused on speed and fancy features, Aptera is steadily building a vehicle that's built to last.
Exactly. And secondly, their commitment to solar charging could be huge in developing countries where reliable charging infrastructure might be lacking.
Yeah.
They're not totally dependent on the grid, which makes them more adaptable and appealing to a wider range of customers.
It's like they're building an EV for the real world,
Right.
not just for people who live in cities with charging stations everywhere. They're thinking ahead, anticipating the needs of a more diverse customer base.
Absolutely. And that forward-thinking approach could be what helps them succeed, regardless of what happens with the U.S. government or the global political situation.
So even with all the ups and downs in the EV market right now, Aptera's unique position and innovative approach might be what sets them apart. They're doing things differently, and that could be their biggest advantage in a world where the rules are constantly changing.
Exactly. They're definitely a company to watch, and their story is a great example of how to navigate a rapidly changing market and a very unpredictable political landscape.
Okay, so let's zoom out and look at the global EV market. It's like this big race, and China's way ahead of everyone else. They're putting a ton of money into EV tech, manufacturing, you name it.
Yeah, China's dominance is hard to ignore. They're selling more EVs than any other country and controlling a big chunk of the battery production, too. And this is important for Aptera because they're not just competing with Tesla and GM, it's a global competition.
So how does Trump's America First idea fit into all of this?
Yeah.
Seems kind of confusing. He wants to boost American manufacturing, but his policies might actually help China get even further ahead in the EV market.
Yeah, it's a tough balance and one that Trump might not be so good at. If he goes too far with protectionism, those tariffs and stuff, and scares away foreign investment, it could backfire big time.
So instead of making America great again, he could actually push EV manufacturing to other countries and hand the whole EV market over to China.
It could happen. Those tariffs would make it more expensive for Aptera and other American EV companies to get parts from overseas.
Yep.
That could slow down production, drive up costs, and American EVs might not be able to compete globally.
It's like trying to win a race, but you're tied up. You think you're protecting yourself, but you're just making it easier for everyone else to win.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to think about this global picture when we're talking about Trump and EVs. It's not just about what happens in the US. It's about how his decisions affect the whole world.
So what does this all mean for Aptera? Can they actually succeed if the U.S. isn't a big player in the global EV race?
Well, it's definitely going to be challenging, but Aptera has a few things going for them. Their design and focus on efficiency could make them really popular in markets where price and practicality are important.
Right.
They're not trying to be the fanciest EV out there. They're aiming for functionality and sustainability.
It's like the tortoise and the hare story. While everyone else is focused on speed and all the bells and whistles, Aptera's quietly building a vehicle that's designed to last.
Exactly. And their focus on solar charging could be a big deal in countries where there aren't a lot of charging stations. They're not completely reliant on the grid, which makes them more adaptable and appealing to a wider range of people.
It's like they're building an EV for the real world, not just for people who live in big cities with charging stations everywhere.
Exactly. And that kind of forward thinking could be their key to success, no matter what happens with the U.S. government or the global political situation.
So even though the EV market is a little crazy right now, Aptera's unique position and innovative approach could be their secret weapon. They're not playing by the usual rules, and that might be their biggest advantage in a world where the rules are always changing.
I think you're right. They're a company to keep an eye on, that's for sure.
Well, that's about it for today. We covered a lot of ground, looked at different possibilities, and explored how Trump's win might shake things up for Aptera and the EV market as a whole.
It's a complex situation, but hopefully this deep dive gave you some food for thought.
Remember, the EV revolution is something we're all a part of. Our choices as consumers, investors, and citizens all make a difference. Stay informed, stay involved, and keep learning.
And if you want to learn more about Aptera, be sure to check out those videos we mentioned on our YouTube channel, The Digital Podcast. We take a closer look at Aptera's technology and what makes them unique. You can also find our podcast on Spotify, where we talk about all sorts of things related to EVs, tech, and the future of transportation.
Don't forget to leave us a comment and let us know what you think. We love hearing from you and keeping this conversation going.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that subscribe button to stay updated on our latest episodes.
We're always exploring new topics, trying to understand complex issues, and bringing you the insights you need to navigate this ever-changing world.
Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.